battle on the combustion engine and that, it's not ready for prime time. Electric trucks are a wonderful concept. I think there's, hydrogen and there's other in-betweens and ways to help get there. But, we need logical regulation that our industry can work with to get there and bridge that gap.
Welcome to the State of the Industry podcast with John Elliott, a third-generation transportation professional, chairman of the Truckload Carriers Association, and founder and CEO of Load One, and me, your host, Brandon Baxter. We've spent more than 2 decades in the industry. We've experienced driver shortages, truck shortages, recessions, financial constraints, technological advancements, and legislation. Yeah, we've seen it all. This is trucking news for the drivers and professionals on the ground. This is opinion and insight from the inside. This is the State of the Industry podcast. Welcome to the State of the Industry podcast with John Elliott. I'm your host, Brandon Baxter. This is a monthly series that's dedicated to discussions pertaining to the trucking industry, and it's featuring commentary by the CEO of Load One and current TCA chairman, John Elliott. John, thanks again for joining me.
Glad to be here, Brandon. It's good to be back for another month.
One more month on the calendar, right? And that month being the month of January is now officially behind us. And, we're into the first quarter of 2023. So let's kind of catch up. Starting with what's the latest that's been going on in your world?
New year, same me, I guess.
New year, new me.
You look a little different than our last podcast.
Yeah, we'll tell the viewers they don't have to adjust their video screen. This is the same guy, just a different haircut.
That's fair. It's been a busy time, and that's nice to get through the holidays and that. Starting to see now the travel schedule and for work and the industry fire back up. So that'll be that actually starts for me hitting hard in about the next week.
Oh, really? What do you have planned on the old travel schedule?
I'm off to a event with Randall Riley down in Florida. I've got a board of directors meeting with our private equity firm. I've got an insurance captive meeting. You name it. Some sales events to be at. So the schedule just rolls and rolls and rolls.
So if we were to take a look at your calendar, most of us would probably shudder as to how much time you're actually going to be spending out and about, right?
Yeah. Delta Airlines loves me.
So far, what are you seeing across the trucking landscape? Like, what are when you peer out, what is it that you're seeing right now?
I think it's a time of shakeup a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think from what we've seen, Brandon, I think that freight is starting to return to a pre-COVID normalization cycle. We didn't see the incredible fourth quarter across the whole trucking industry. Right. And I think in a big part that was due to retail. Retail inventories were up. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't, everything I read, it wasn't that they had a lot of inventory, but they didn't have the right inventory, if that makes sense. Well, if you go back to last year, a lot of times these retailers were ordering stuff a year in advance, 9 months in advance. Anything they could get on the calendar as a ship date, they were taking because shelves were empty. They couldn't have products to sell during the prime time. Right. So they were having to order and order and order and really having to do it like this, not knowing what the trends were going to be 6 months, 9 months out, So I think that retail inventories were up. I think, the first quarter here, you're going to see retailers take some hits and sure. clear a lot of that inventory out because now they're getting back to where they can order stuff 90, 120 days out and know they're going to have it on the shelves and that. So they're not going to have to do that same arrangement this year as they had to do last year. So I think you're going to see a much more normal retail trend into the fourth quarter. We're seeing volumes down a little bit in the first quarter across our whole industry. And I think, again, it goes back to a pre-COVID kind of freight trend where first quarter was your lowest, second quarter built up, third built on that, and fourth quarter was always your biggest quarter. I think some companies I've talked to and peers in the industry are feeling a lot more than we are. But again, we're pretty strongly diversified. So I think that helps us. And we have a lot more direct shipper relationships. So that helps us versus people that are relying on 3PLs and bid boards and that for their freight. That volume tends to suffer more than the direct shipper volume. You've had some people out there calling, screaming, trucking recession from the rooftops and this,
Right.
that. I don't believe that's the case. I think what you're seeing is a freight normalization. And I think that is very bloody for a lot of companies, in the fact that a lot of companies jumped in during when rates and volumes are high. They overpaid for equipment. They had to buy very expensive insurance. The costs of capital, interest rates are climbing. Quite simply, they could make money at exorbitant rates, but they weren't structured to be able to make money during normal times. So I think you're going to see a little bit of a bloodbath or a thinning of the herd there. But in general, if you look at, I think a lot of that is, sadly, a lot of it's owner operators or small fleets that became their own authority that are going to have to migrate back to being small fleets and under carriers and that again. If you look in past freight recessions, the industry, we were our own worst enemy. We went out and bought trucks and expanded capacity when things were hot and jumped all over it. Well, the good thing was during the last couple of years of the COVID boom, trucks weren't available. There weren't extra drivers. You couldn't get trucks. You couldn't get trailers. People were buying used trailers and used trucks for 30% more than a brand new one. And those economics don't work during normal times. They may work during a highly heated time, but not during normalization. So again, I think what you're seeing right now is really a move slowly back to normalization, and that which hopefully is good for the economy. It helps to bring down inflation and other things. Now, I don't think you're going to see rates go back to pre-COVID levels. That's not possible.
Right.
With the cost of it, even new equipment, the labor costs have gone up. Insurance costs. There's so many fundamentals that have risen that you're not going to see rates go back to where they were pre-COVID. But you're not essentially going to be riding the top of the wave like they did during the heat of the supply chain breakdown.
The orders for new trucks out there. I mean, you and I have both talked with people out there across the landscape that, they're kind of caught in limbo, right? They're waiting for the trucks. In a lot of cases, it's the computer chip shortage. Have you heard anything, on your end? Have you heard anything as far as, truck availability, equipment, that sort of thing?
We've seen trailer availability loosen up a little bit, and I'd say a little bit. Truck availability, we're still not seeing that. We're fighting for allocations still from our suppliers this year. And we're probably going to get, honestly, 25% of what we would normally buy or request.
Oh, wow.
Now, maybe that'll improve as the year goes on. Maybe some carriers will back out of slots that they had bought. But I don't think you're going to see that happen because most of the slots are going to the larger carriers and that versus the individual owner operators and that. And, a lot of that is just simply replacement for aging equipment. The large fleets, including us, our trucks have aged a little more than the time frame that we normally keep them because you couldn't get replacements. So, I think some of that is just going to be catch up for quite a while. It's going to be a tumultuous time over the next few years for the Class 8 OEMs. By the time they get caught up from this, you've got new emission standards coming down the pike, which is, if they happen the way that the government's rolling them out or saying now, it's going to cause another massive pre-buy of trucks to get those in place before the next emission standards get rolled in. Because, whenever we roll out heavy new emission standards, there's a lot of new technology and a lot of things that, unfortunately, reliability and uptime and those things tend to suffer as those technologies are worked out and placed into the field. So we've been through it in the past when we introduced DEF and all the sensors on the trucks. Unfortunately, the way our government is pushing, it's coming again.
I've actually had conversations similar to what you're, talking about. Individuals who, during the onset of COVID went out and they bought themselves a Sprinter van, bought themselves a straight truck because they could get into something like that. And now you're seeing on the other side of that, what's happening to those individuals. And, if you can kind of elaborate for a second on the idea of somebody like that, maybe that's somebody who's listening to or watching the podcast right now who find themselves perhaps stuck because they went out and got their own authority and that freight for them is drying up. What can they do? Where can they go?
I think the logical move is going to be back to leasing on to a carrier.
Mhm.
Again, during a hyperinflated market, anyone can go out and be successful. And I'm
Sure.
not bashing the people that took that chance and made that effort to do that. It's just, unfortunately, it was a perfect storm. Equipment prices, insurance prices, fuel prices. I mean, the price of everything, the price of parts, labor, tires, it's very hard. And when you're in that kind of economy and those carriers, newbies like that or startups, are generally relying on third-party business.
Sure.
They're getting it off bid boards or brokers or other carriers and that. At some point, you start to look at your costs, as the freight rates come down, you look at revenue. At some point, you're more economical to go back under a big carrier flag because, we have the sales structures. We have the direct relationships with customers and with shippers and that. Like you said, in a hyper market, there was money to be made. But hypermarkets only last so long. And unfortunately, more people should have realized that. But they didn't. And, I respect anyone for taking a chance and doing what they thought was best to better themselves or an opportunity.
Sure.
But, hey, I could have been wrong. It could still swing again tomorrow. It could mess up the whole supply chain. We didn't know if COVID was going to be a year. I mean, God, we all thought it was going to be 6 weeks.
Right. Flattening the curve, right?
And we're getting ready in May to declare it officially over. I'm not sure how we determine months in advance that that's the date we'll declare it over. Right. But but the bad parts of it, I mean, God forbid, it could have lasted for years longer. Yeah. I mean, at this point, none of us imagined it lasting for years. So to say it could have lasted 2 more years longer, nothing seems out of the ordinary or out of question any longer. The realities of what could be.
You make a good point, though. I mean, in the conversations, at least that I've had with folks out there looking for a place to put their truck, or a lot of times, they start out by just simply, "Hey, I'm looking for freight," right? And something that in a conversation I might have with with somebody like that would be to try and nudge them toward a company such as Load One, for example, somewhere where they can go, they can lease their truck on, and they can find steady work.
Yeah, I think logically that's, and not just saying my company, but that's the smarter long-term play. The other thing I think that got a lot of these guys hyped up was the advent of the dispatch service, which is really quite. I mean, when you see these guys on Facebook for $399, you can take our webinar online and we'll help you and give you all the templates and you can go out and be your own dispatch service. Well, it's like Amway. I don't know. I mean, again, I respect anyone trying to build their own business.
Sure.
But, to me, those are brokers. The government's still going back and forth on this.
Yes.
But, MAP 21 said anyone who arranges for the transportation of freight is a broker. Right. And to me, dispatch service screams I'm a broker.
Absolutely. That makes sense.
When they're trying to go out there and do things that professional brokers do for a living.
Right.
And they're doing it uninsured, without the legalities, without the financial restraints behind them. And that, again, it's not a level playing field. But again, a lot of these individual owner operators or small fleets thought, wow, we could just work with a dispatch service or two, let them be that arm for us.
Right.
And dispatch services were, again, going after, in general, I'll say the lower hanging spot kind of freight, which was ample for a while, when the market was heated. Right. But again, I think you're going to see a lot of them disappear very quickly because there just isn't room in the market for all those people and all those layers. You got to get back to basics at some point. And I think being with a good established carrier that has sales team, has financial stability, and has the freight is really the longer term play for a successful owner operator.
And that makes a lot of sense. I guess from the perspective of maybe somebody who let's say, they maybe not a straight truck, but they purchased a Sprinter van, right? And they're just not seeing that freight getting out from underneath of something like that. I mean, well, we can use the example of a straight truck as well. Would that help the market?
Van, a lot of them jumped on with multi-carriers. And again, there were a lot of multi-carriers that sprung up out of nowhere and that. Right. And again, they were reselling low-hanging freight and that stuff. And, most of those carriers do not have true sales teams. They're dialing for dollars. They're looking at bid boards all day and just bidding on trucks. Well, that we do those things too, but that's the lowest part of what we do. That is backfill filler freight. That is not the freight that our trucks are going to rely upon for their revenue and income. Again, it was a highly heated market with some great numbers for a little while, but anyone in the business knows that storm passes. It never lasts. Spot market's great like that. When you get hurricanes, you get storms, supply chain disruptions, things like that. But day in and day out, those bid boards that are designed to try to optimize the rates for the customer, and you're selling at the lowest possible dollar.
Hard to survive on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, short term, when things are terrible the other way, yeah, those bid boards have to pay some huge rates because the tide turns on them.
Right.
But in the big long picture, they're not designed. It's like somebody says they want to go to McDonald's and work in the line as a career. Well, it's not designed for that kind of job.
Right.
And bid boards were not designed to support running a trucking company.
John, kind of switching gears a little bit. Obviously, we've got the month of March will be upon us here in a little bit, and so becomes the end of your reign as TCA chairman. As we get to that point, what do you think is left on your to-do list? For that role.
There's not a lot left to do. It's really, we're getting ready to come into our annual meeting, which knock on wood is looking phenomenal. We're way ahead of registration numbers. Looks like it's going to be a record attendance this far out. Our registrations are well above normal at this point. All the exhibit space sold out well in advance. We sold out the hotel block. We had to get a second hotel, and we're at a Gaylord, which is huge.
Oh, I've been over there. That's gorgeous.
Yeah. So, it's really shaping up to be a pretty world-class event, and it's really, I've got great leadership following me. Dave Williams, Senior Vice President, Knight Swift, will come in as chairman after me. Dave's went through the whole officer line with me, one step behind for years now. So we've had a great working relationship, as well as the chairman ahead of me. I'll move to past chairman role for a year and still be a key part of the executive management team for the association. But really, I'm happy to look back on the year and look at what we've done. I mean, there's been some great accomplishments.
Yeah.
And again, I'm just the lucky guy who's leading a really excellent group of officers and a really phenomenal organization of staff, that run the TCA. We revamped our professional driver program, professional driver and owner operator program. We're going to have 5 individuals up on stage this time. Each are going to walk away with a $20,000 cash prize, which is huge. And that, our truckload profitability program, which helps carriers to understand their numbers better and work together. We have over 150 carriers now submitting data and working through these groups, and the value of that and understanding your numbers is really critical, especially when you're going into a time that could be a storm ahead. I'm not as negative Nelly as some people, and that I think, if you're smart and run your business well, you'll be fine. We've revamped our whole safety competition, and instead of just naming awards now of who's the best carriers, we're really collecting a lot of the data, and we're going to be able to package that and help carriers understand why that carrier won and what things did they do and what were those metrics. Because, safety is something that really should not be a secret. I'm really proud of our safety program, but I want the other carriers out there to have good safety programs too, because, one, they're on the road with my family and on the road with my trucks. Yeah. 2, they represent our industry. No one in this industry wants dangerous trucking companies out there on the roads. Right. So it's a great common goal. We expanded our government affairs, and that we now have 2 internal lobbyists and 2 full-time lobbyists out on the Hill, external, telling the story of truckload, which I think is great. TCA, we were able to step up and help fund the American Trucking Association's fight with Rhode Island over the tolling.
That's right. Yes,
and that was a great victory for our industry. That was predatory tolling that just went after the trucking industry. And what a lot of people don't understand is, well, I don't run Rhode Island. Why does that matter to me? It does matter. It really was a cancer, because if Rhode Island had won, New Jersey would have followed. Pennsylvania would follow. Illinois would have followed. There are a lot of states that already have plans on the books to look at this concept. So it was a very expensive fight for our industry, but one that we had to do. And I'm really proud to say that as an industry, we won that. As well, a lot of drivers may not have heard of a NATME, which is the certification part of our industry. It certifies drivers, trainers, certifies your safety professionals, things like that. NATME is actually a wholly owned company of the TCA, and that that was something that really was never well known. We're bringing that back in house and really integrating them more to bring more value and to expand that program, the driver trainers and other areas as well. The other two big things, really, if I look at TCA, we've joined on now in support to the initial stakeholders in what's called the Trucker Service Association. And this is an organization put together to help fight to protect the rights of owner operators and that business model against the attacks.
That's huge.
By our federal government and more so by states such as California with the AB5 test and that. Right. Trucking, the owner operator model is a fundamental in that. I mean, so many companies in our industry started with one guy or one girl and on one truck, and that's where they started their business and went from there. I mean, that's how my family got in this business. When my grandfather, was a truck driver, became an owner operator, later started his own company. And really that's the American dream, and it's an attack on the American dream, and we're going to help fight that as every way we can. The other thing that just got announced is the Clean Freight Coalition, and TCA joined in with 4 other partners, including the ATA and some other organizations, to launch that organization or association or coalition, I should say, coalition probably the best term, to help fight some of these regulatory emission standards and emission standards and that. Trucking as an industry, we want to help make this environment better. It's a 68-to-1 ratio on the emissions of what a truck was compared to 10 to 12 years ago. It's a phenomenal number, and we support and want to keep doing better and better. Yeah. But now, this battle on the combustion engine and that, it's not ready for prime time. So, electric trucks are a wonderful concept. I think there's, hydrogen and there's other in-betweens and ways to help get there. But, we need logical regulation that our industry can work with to get there and bridge that gap. The timeframes and the plans that some of these regulators have put out are not realistic. They can't be met, especially by the long haul trucking industry, or especially like Expedite, where you're regularly routed. Sure. We can't run a truck for 8 hours, bring it back and plug it in, for 12 hours. And that we don't know where our trucks are going. We don't run a set time schedule, things like that. So, there needs to be some common sense, applied to this. And as a coalition, we're going to work to try to help educate regulators and work with them. Again, we're not working against them. That's not our goal. Right. They need someone who's at the table with them, helping to educate them to understand the different, dynamics of what they want to do. Too often, I think, regulators often have good intentions, but they're not always fully informed, and they don't always understand the full effects of what they regulate. Data's everything. You can look at it on national, like all the way down to, if I look at our company. Sure. Just a few weeks ago, we rolled out a new a driver app. This one's designed for our fleet owners. So it's the same idea. We're giving them now the power right in their handheld, their iPad or their phone, their Android or iOS phone, to be able to look at their fleet of trucks that they own and see the data and manage that and be able to, instead of waiting to the end of the week to get data or having to go find a computer somewhere and sign in, they can look at it anytime, anywhere. Again, data's power, more and more in business. It's the ability to not just have big intelligence or big data. I mean, I'll lie to you, we have servers full of more data than I know what to do with sometimes. But it's trying to make that data actionable, and if we were able to work with our people, once again, our owners and our drivers, what do you need? What do you need to better run your business? And then we can figure out, can we get them that? Can we extract that? And in most cases, we were able to. So again, it's another knock on wood, good win for the company. And then just going to help to continue to drive our growth. I mean, we just knock on wood, keep growing.
Hey, sorry to interrupt your podcast listening. Okay, actually, I'm not sorry. I honestly wanted to interrupt for just a couple moments and talk to you about John Elliott and Load One. Okay, look, John and I have known each other for years. We've worked together in some capacity over that frame of time. But honestly, right now, having the opportunity to host this podcast with him has been fantastic. And what's fantastic for you, the driver, the owner-operator, is an opportunity at Load One. That's right. This is an ad spot for Load One. They're currently recruiting for owner-operators. So if you've got a straight truck, you've got a tractor, you are a team, maybe you've got a sprinter, you want to run expedite, you want to run truckload, get in now. Get in while the getting's good here, because Load One's got great benefits that they offer you. Layover pay, paid moves. They've got a wonderful driver's lounge tailored specifically to the driver, and all you have to do is go to their website. It's load1.com. That's one.com. Or you can apply directly at Expeditors Online or go to justcdljobs.com. They've got their stuff plastered all over there. You click on the link, you fill out the application, and I promise you, driving with Load One is going to be the best decision that you've ever made. All right, now back to the podcast. You've shown that you have had that ability year over year to be able to go to your drivers, go to your independent, contractors, your fleet owners, just as you're saying, ask them, what is it that we can do for you to make things better? And you deliver time and time again.
That's the end of the day. As long as we don't lose that, we'll continue to win. I think that goes with your staff, that goes with your drivers and everyone, you need to do that both internally and externally. And that's a silly part of why, somebody will ask why I go to truck shows and that, because you know what, I want to talk to people. I want to understand. I want to hear their feedback and I don't want to get it through a survey all the time. I don't want to get it through somebody collecting data and then presenting to me what they think it is.
Right.
So I just want to, you get a lot more understanding of just one-on-one and that face-to-face.
I mean, you're going right to the source. Who better to talk to than the individuals who are out there?
Then I get all those free swag giveaways.
Oh, maybe in the next episode, we'll talk about my days as a recruiter at the Mid-American Truck Show and how items that are not nailed down to your table will walk away.
We'll be there. We'll be there at the end of March, and I get it. I mean, it's kind of funny. I can remember, my daughter's a senior in college now, and I can remember coming home from the Mid-American Truck Show, or the Expedite Expo was one of them, and I dropped a bag on her bed full of pens and stress balls and all that goofy little stuff, and she walks back into my bedroom, drops the bag back. She's like, "I'm 12 now. I don't need this. I don't want this stuff anymore." I'm like, "You loved this stuff last year." Apparently, 11 to 12 is the age cutoff where truck show swag is no longer a thing, but these are lessons you learn in parenting.
Good to know, because I'll be at Matt's, and my 12-year-old son, obviously he won't be into it then, but my twins will. They're 9, so we're good to go.
Yep, you're good. You still got
another year out of it.
Yeah. I think really everyone just be safe out there. Keep your head down. Like you said, I think business is going to continue to firm back up again coming out of this first quarter. The rates may not be through the roof for everybody, but keep your wheels moving, keep your bills paid right now, and that stuff where I watch some guys think they're still going to get rates they got a year ago, and that's not going to happen. So, when your truck's sitting, it costs you. So be smart, play the long game, and win.
Well, John, thank you again for this episode, and to our listeners and viewers out there, thank you so much for joining us for the State of the Industry podcast with John Elliott. I have been your host, Brandon Baxter. So join us again next time as John and I will discuss once again. We'll continue the discussion, all topics transportation. And by the way, don't forget to check out expeditersonline.com and justcdljobs.com for access to over 150 carriers. They're actively hiring, and that includes Load One. Until next time. This has been the State of the Industry podcast with John Elliott. For more information on Load One and how to apply for one of their posted job opportunities, go to load1.com. That's one.com. And as always, be sure to check out our show notes for more information regarding Load One, Expeditors Online, justcdljobs.com, and any other tidbits that were mentioned during our show. Until next time.